You're listening to the Teach Better Talk podcast featuring expert educators eager to share progressive tactics to reach more students. Teach Better Talk is created by teachers and fueled by passion. Let's get started.
Hey everyone, welcome to episode 67 of Teach Better Talk. I'm Ray Hewart with almost my full voice back, and I am always happy to celebrate that I am with the smiley Jeff Gargis.
Smiley? I'm very, when you say that, I smile, so that's funny. That you calling me smiley made me smiley.
You're pretty smiley, Jeff. I mean, I know you're not on camera during this podcast, and people are listening, when they're either working out or in the shower or in the car, but I think you're smiling through the whole thing.
I'm typically smiling.
If you had to guess, who do you think that was submitted by?
I have no...
Dun, dun, dun. No... You'll never get it. There's no way. Out of the millions of people in the world. That was submitted by your BFF, Adam Welcome.
Oh, I was like seriously about to say Adam Welcome. And then I'm like, nah, he would have used something different. I don't know why. But yeah, I'll take smiley. I typically smile.
Well, he was going to use a few mean words, but instead he went with smiley.
Well, that's good. I'm glad. Thanks, Adam.
So what'd you think of this episode, Jeff? Was this like one of your favorites? Does it make the great list? Is it, a no-go? Should they stop listening now?
No, this is definitely a great episode. Ray, this is someone who is, in your building, someone who you've known for a while, and you've told me a little bit about it, because when we got him booked on the podcast, you're like, oh, this is all the amazing things that he's doing in his class and his outlook on education and physical education and how he looks at it and stuff. And so you talked him up quite a bit. And before the episode, we were kind of like, boy, I hope he's as awesome as you make him sound, right? Because that's how you think when someone talks someone up, right? You're always wondering. But man, it really was a great episode. Super, super excited about it. I think people are going to get a lot out of it. I love the fact that, I think he was our first phys ed teacher to have on. But great, even if you're not a PE teacher, just so many awesome things that the way he looks at his subject matter, I think works for regardless of what subject you're in. So,
well, Jeff, I have to tell you, in our building, he really is an educational leader in our building. People really respect him. He has so much insight to share. He's constantly growing himself. And I'm telling you, when you're around somebody who's constantly working for better, you want to be better. And so he is somebody I've really tried to latch onto the past few years and continue to learn from. He's got so much insight that he continues to share, not only in this podcast, but day to day in our building.
So let me just rattle off a few things. So this is episode. It's with Michael Jennings. So he's a phys ed teacher. He's been teaching and coaching for about 10 years now. He's a certified strength and conditioning specialist through the National Strength and Conditioning Association. He's got nearly a decade of experience in he's done all kinds of youth development fields, both in public and private stuff. He's big on, I love he talks about physical literacy. He's big on that long-term athletic development and sort of a holistic development and education of his students. And he does he does some presenting local, state, and regional conferences, typically talking about things like how to show student growth, assessment and feedback, curriculum development of culture of physical activity in schools, and then that long-term athletic development. I love his focus on improving physical literacy is how he said it. He said, and what got me right off the start is that it's no different than a math teacher trying to improve math literacy. And I love that, like, the way from that point on, everything he says, you can just flip and put your content area into everything he says. And I think that's why your building views him as a educational leader, because everything he says applies to every subject, and it's really, really cool. So
it's really interesting. I think in buildings, at least when I'm thinking back to high school, right? There's always like a department that seems to rule the school. When I was in high school, right or wrong, like the music department in my high school just ruled the school. And I have to tell you, in my building, the middle school I now work in, our PE department is just killer. They're constantly winning grants. They're constantly upping their game. And I'm not sure that it's often found in, everywhere that they have this like really progressive approach to reaching students with physical education. And his focus on, with his team, of course, but not just it being a really purposeful hour to 45 minutes running around, right? They're doing so much more. They are truly trying to teach the whole child. And while we talk about doing that in reading class, we talk about doing that in math class and science, I really want to echo the need for us to be teaching the whole child in all of our content areas. So as he continued to focus on physical literacy and incorporating movement in the classroom, I mean, there's nothing more important than for us to take that message and ensure that becomes a new focus for us, even today, whether it be tomorrow or today or next week. I think it's a really great focus.
Absolutely. You mentioned real quick, and I wonder if you can give us just a quick look into your mind on incorporating movement in the classroom. Do you do any of that in your classroom specifically? Is there any way that you incorporate movement into your typical day-to-day stuff?
I incorporate movement pretty well, I would say, but I have to say that after even listening to Michael Jennings on this podcast, I'm like, gosh, it's an area I need to work in. I thought I was doing okay, and now I'm rethinking my whole world, let's be honest. But, as a teacher, you can go to one extreme and incorporate no movement, right? Students walk in, they sit down, and they don't move their butts from their seats until the bell rings and you stand up and you leave. And that's like the worst case scenario, right? But in my classroom, I run a mastery-based classroom. So students have the freedom to not only utilize flexible seating where they're able to sit down wherever they're comfortable, move whenever they need to, but also because it's a mastery learning classroom, they're constantly moving from individual work, group work, grabbing something from the other side of the classroom. And so there's kind of movement incorporated in our daily learning in that component. What I'd love to improve more on is I take 6 to 8 minutes in the very beginning of class where we come together as a full class and we do a mini lesson. And when we talk about mastery learning, I mean, our mini lesson is truly either a review for a student who's already mastered that content, a preview for a student who has not yet gotten to that content, or it's a kind of like a recap for a student who's currently working on that content today. And we use that mini lesson to just kind of get all on the same page and talk through some processes together. And even through that 6 to 8 minute mini lesson, I need to incorporate more movement, right? We do call and repeats to get students' attention, but how can I do that making them physically move their body rather than just maybe respond, orally? Or how can we go throughout our learning where we might be singing a song to remember a math concept? How can there be a dance move in there? Or how can we study punctuation? Kim Bearden is an amazing ELA teacher that I follow at the Ron Clark Academy. And one of the silly ways she does is she has the students practice punctuating a paragraph, and for every type of punctuation, there's a physical movement that goes with it. So whatever type of teacher you are, as you're listening, as you're, working out or just starting your day, the ability to blend in the movement of students to physically move to learn is an incredible connection that I hope we all continue to make a goal for ourselves in our classrooms.
I couldn't have asked for more from you right there, right? That was fantastic.
Yay me.
Yeah,
I really love this topic, and Michael
I know,
got me all pumped.
Yeah, and I thought I was gonna say other stuff, but I'm like, no, you just wrapped it up perfectly. I love that. So let's just get right to the episode, number 67 with Michael Jennings. All right, we're here and we're talking with Michael Jennings. And Michael, man, it is super exciting to have you on. I have heard actually a lot about you because you are actually in the same building as Ray. So you guys obviously have known each other for a while. You guys have worked together. You guys interact. So I've heard some awesome stories about you. I'm super excited to kind of dive in your head and learn about what you're doing in your classrooms and what you're doing with your students and dive into the passion that you have for what you do. But first, before we get into any of that, man, how are you feeling tonight?
Very good. Very good. A little bit of a whirlwind leading up to tonight, but we're here now. Everything's good. I think I just got word that we found the squirrel from the backyard. So
can you share for our listeners what happened with the squirrel?
Yeah. So I'm coming home. I'm hurrying home from a sand volleyball game, and I'm all excited to do the podcast. And my wife calls and says, the power's been out for the past hour. And I'm like, the power's been out? Like, it's not even raining here. What is happening? right? And she goes, I don't know, but there's a guy in the backyard and the power's been out and yada, yada, yada. So I get home and I'm sitting here thinking, like, how am I going to get a hold of these folks to tell them that I'm late because my power's out, right? And right as I get home, the electrician, the guy that's in the backyard, comes out and says, hey, we got your power back on. A squirrel got into the lines. I couldn't find the squirrel. I see that you have dogs. You should really go for a look for that squirrel. So as I'm letting my computer reboot and get everything back up and running, my wife is, lo and behold, a saint and going out and looking for the squirrel so our dogs don't eat it. And the rest, as they say, is history. And so here we are. Made it safe and sound.
And the squirrel is found
and disposed of,
and
not
disposed
by one of our dogs, I'm told.
All
so
right.
That's exciting.
Well, okay.
Jennings, it is totally your style to come into this podcast with some big, horrific event right to start us off. I mean, I feel like that's just the perfect start to your podcast featuring the amazing Coach Jennings.
Well, I don't know if I should be excited or thankful for that, but I think you might be right.
I know Jeff gave you a pretty great introduction. I am so stoked to have you on because I know that you have incredible things to share. But before we beat into too much about your silly squirrel story or anything else that might pop up during this episode, I want to make sure that we start off our first question focused on you and really all that you're about. So you've done some amazing things in your career. You have incredible dreams of where education's headed. And I've just had the pleasure for the past few years working with you. But how in the world do you describe what you do?
There's kind of two main ways that I go about answering that question, because over the years, I've gotten basically two different types of responses. I don't like to say that I'm a gym teacher. I don't like to just say that I'm a PE teacher. So I really upfront say that I'm a physical educator. And the two responses that I get are, oh, that must be nice. You get to play games all day. Or I get the, oh man, how do you deal with all of those kids running around, right? And so, I kind of take that and I kind of giggle with it, right? I understand what's going on, but the reason I say that I'm a physical educator is because I say, my ultimate goal is to improve my students' physical literacy. No different than a math teacher tries to improve math literacy or a reading teacher with reading literacy, right? So that's kind of where I go. And then at that time is where questions really start pouring in, like, what are you talking about? Like, that doesn't sound like any of the PE teachers that I've had in my life. And I say, well, probably because there's a group of us that are not the PE teachers that you had when you were going through school. So,
so let's dive into that a little bit more. When you say improve physical literacy, can you expand on that? When I say, well, what is that? What are you talking about? How do you apply to that then?
Yeah, so physical literacy in a nutshell, I mean, you could go around and find a bunch of different definitions. In a nutshell, it's the ability, an individual's ability to be confident, competent, and motivated to participate in a wide variety of physical activities. So being able to do a variety of different movements in a variety of different environments in a variety of different settings, whether it's a team setting, individual setting, weight room setting, game setting, PE setting, whatever the case may be, with the mindset of, everybody's on this journey, right, throughout life. And whether you claim to be an athlete or not, you still have to solve movement problems, right? You still have to get out of bed in the morning. You still have to, unfortunately, trip going up the stairs sometimes. You still, hopefully are trying to be physically active for a lifetime. And if we can give our students more movement tools in their movement toolbox, then they're going to be more likely to be happy and healthy for a lifetime. So it's not just being competent, like able to do the skills, but being confident in those skills, knowing that you can do them. And then at the end, having the motivation to do that for a lifetime. So not just stopping playing games or exercising when you get out of high school because it's not for a grade anymore, or not just, choosing to be inactive when you go to college because you don't have to take a PE class in college, right? But you understand the benefits, you are competent in your abilities to do it, and you're confident. And that to me is what we're trying to do in the realm of physical education.
And I love that. I love the different perspective you have on it, because that wasn't the PE teachers that I had. I mean, it just wasn't. And I wish I would have had more physical education, more physical literacy when I went into college. Because when you said it, it hit me right on. Like stop when I was in college, because I didn't have to take a PE class, and I didn't. And this past August, our teammate Chad Ostrowski and I really have gotten. Well, he was going before me, but it was in August when I kind of made a lot of changes and started really focusing on my personal health and running and working out. And we've talked a bunch, he and I, about how, man, if we would have just done this continually from after high school, we'd be in like ridiculous shape, and this would be so easy. And that's that. I in my opinion, that's what was going in my head as you were saying that physical literacy of understanding the benefits to it and doing it for more than just the idea of getting the grade. And now I see why Ray speaks so highly of you, because that's how she looks at all of the literacy she's trying to instill in her students in her classroom as well. So, man, I'm loving it. I'm excited already. So I'm excited to hear this one from you, man. We talk a lot about failure on this podcast. I'm a big fan of a big believer in looking at your failures and learning from them, and seeing the opportunity just to learn from everyone that you have. So can you take us to a time that you've had a failure in your life? Tell us what happened. Why was it a failure? How'd you overcome it? And then what'd you take away from that?
How much time do you have? It's a hard question to answer for me, because, and I don't want this to sound, any different than what it is, but I'm not naive, and I'm not too arrogant to say, like, hey, I fail all the time. Whether it's a great lesson plan and activity plan that I have that I am certain is going to knock these kids' socks off and they're going to have a great time. And it turns out that every kid gets to try the activity once in the 47 minutes that we have them. And then I'm like, okay, back to the drawing board. Or if it's a time where, I'm trying a new way to do warm-ups and everybody's doing the opposite of what they want them to do. And it's because I messed up on the instructions. And so, to me, the best part about education and the best part about what I do is I get to be honest with myself and with my students and with my peers and saying, yeah, hey, I messed that up. But you better believe that I'm not going to do it again tomorrow, right? I'm going to fix something, or I'm going to fix something before next hour. And so, and I think like I said, it's hard for me to just list one thing, but it's a combination of, whether it's, for example, we teach health for a portion of our PE curriculum time. And Ray, bless her heart, helped me out with the grid method and taught me a whole deal, and sat me down and came over and met with me and helped me out. And I had no idea, but I knew that it was really cool, and I was really excited about it. And here I go making an introductory grid, which I think is going to, take 2 or 3 days. And lo and behold, a week later, we're still on the introductory grid, because the kids are like, Mr. Jennings, you've just put so much stuff in here, we can't physically get through it. And I go back and reevaluate, and I'm like, you know what? I did. I had a week's worth of work in what I wanted to be 2 days. And found myself getting frustrated with the students, because it's like, well, you guys should be going through this quicker. And it's just that reevaluation kind of got me to think, like, all right, let's take a step back. Let's fix this, right? Let's, no harm, no foul. And the best part about it is, if you're upfront and open with your kids, with the students, then it's like, they know you're human too. Sometimes it helps to remind people of that, rather than, hey, you're just a teacher, right?
Hey everyone, while we take a quick break, I want to make sure I mentioned how impactful the grid method has been in my educational career. If you are a teacher looking to reach more students, I promise you can listen to every podcast in the world and participate in any Twitter chat, but the grid method is the step that I needed to take to really ensure I was reaching all my students. So if you're interested in learning more, there's a free course, there's a full course, and everything in between. Head over to teachbetter.com and find more details.
Yeah, it's a great story. I want to let you know, make sure you understand that Chad Ostrowski, who created the grid method, did the same exact thing. I think it was on a second or third grid. He had his first two that went really well, and then that third one he just overloaded it and couldn't figure out why his kids were taking so long to get through it. And then when he reevaluated and reassessed it, he realized he did the same thing, just stuffed too much in there. So you're good, man. You're good.
Yeah, well, I appreciate
right
that. For a while, I was like, "Holy cow, what am I doing?"
So you've been running the grid method with in your health class for this entire year, or just for a little while now, or what has it been?
Just for a little while. So, how our school district does health at the middle school level is we actually take our students. Each PE teacher takes their students out of physical education for 6 weeks, and then we're into a classroom for that 6 weeks. And so I just finished up my health rotation. At the end of February. So I had a 6 week trial run of the grid method, and honestly, I can't wait to do it again next year. Like when I get to go back into the classroom, I thought it was awesome.
Awesome, so. That's great to hear. So now let's flip it around. Now let's talk about a time that you've had a success. And this can be something big, something small. But tell us what happened. Why was it a successful moment for you? And then what'd you take away from that?
So going back to I'm super pumped that you asked this question first off, because this just happened to me like last week. And so I was thinking about this and it was just perfect. But going back to physical literacy, a big part of physical literacy and, improving an individual's competence, confidence, and motivation is teaching fundamental movement skills. And a lot of times people get wrapped up with fundamental movement skills being things like throwing, catching, striking with a bat or a racket, kicking, running, skipping, things along those lines, which are all very, very important, obviously, and that's a different conversation for a different day, I think. But one of the fundamental movement skills is actually falling, right? And when I say that to people, they're like, "What do you mean falling?" Well, what do you do when you fall, right? And when they say, "Well, I don't know, I hurt my wrist, or I hit my elbow, or I hit my shoulder," or hopefully not, but you hit your head. And it's like, well, of course you do, because you maybe don't have necessarily the competence in a spatial awareness setting to adjust your body to get yourself to a point where you can land as safely as possible, all things considered. And so we actually, in my PE classes, we actually take time and we work on falling. And so eventually we get to a point where our class is working on something called the shoulder roll, which is essentially a somersault, but kind of at an angle. So you don't really get your head hit, or your shoulders, or your elbows, or your knees, and you can kind of absorb the blow, take a nice roll, and then move on with what you're doing. And so we're working on this, and there's a couple of students, some of the the sporty students start thinking like, "Oh, this is really easy." Some of the sporty students are like, "Oh my gosh, I've never moved this way before, and I really am struggling to pick it up." So they're kind of getting a little bit embarrassed. And one of those students that was really athletic and really played a lot of sports couldn't do a shoulder roll to save their life. And so we kept working on it. And just last week, I kid you not, we're going through we started a little bit of a parkour unit this year. And so that student is going through this parkour obstacle course where you're just trying to jump over things. And we have some mini trampolines that they're jumping on, and they're just kind of running around, trying to at their own pace. And this student was just running and got tripped up and did a shoulder roll perfectly. And instead of continuing on with the obstacle course, ran straight over to me, stopped what they're doing, and was like, "Mr. Jennings, did you see my shoulder roll?" And I'm sitting here, I'm like, "Wait, what? Wait, what? What are you talking about?" And they're like, "Yeah, I got tripped and I went right into it. And I hopped back up and it was perfect. I didn't hit anything. I didn't feel a thing." And I was like, "That's great, right?" And so that to me, although it's probably sounds silly, that to me was like out of this world. The students stopped what they were doing, came over and said, "Hey, what we had been working on, what I couldn't do, I did, and I did successfully." It was just brought, all the feels, right? Just filled my bucket. Just absolutely fantastic.
That's an awesome story. I love that you share that one. And I want to jump in because Ray, I think Ray knows this, but I actually worked for quite a few years with the World Free Run and Parkour Federation.
Oh,
And
that is
your
fantastic.
which yeah, so if you want to introduce, I can introduce you to the founders. Actually, he's a cousin. Anyway, long story short, but your shoulder roll that you described, taking the movement and diagonal, is actually a natural way of falling that we actually unlearn as we grow up, and that's one of the very first things when you're training for parkour that they'll go through, because of that very reason that you just described to happen to your student. Because
Yeah.
before you can try any of these things that you're going to try as you're training in parkour, you need to know how to land, how to fall properly, because you're trying things that you haven't been able to do before. So that's really cool. I afterwards, we're going to talk more about your parkour unit. I'm very interested in that. So
Yeah, that would be awesome. I'd love to
very
do that.
cool.
Jeff, you totally stole my thunder because I was going to make a joke to our listeners that you're like stepped away from your mic and you're trying to do a shoulder roll. And in reality, you actually know what it is. And so it's not that funny now.
I didn't say I could do it. I just said I know what it is.
I wanted to paint this picture of you standing in your recording studio, like trying to flip over yourself. And now it just totally doesn't have the same
Do you want me
flair, let
like I
tell
can
ya.
do it? And you guys can literally like hear it through the mic, like, and then
Well,
no.
you'll definitely have to ask him about his parkour unit because I don't go into the gym very often, but I definitely went into the gym as all of these things were set up, and I was just amazed by all of the things that they are doing over in PE in my building. It's insane. We have a very, very incredible set of coaches over there. It's amazing. So, Jennings, I want to kind of focus on what you're excited about because all of your stories, your failure story, your success story, something I pulled out of there that I really admire about you is your ability to be transparent. You're so transparent with your students. I think that's why they love you so much. I mean, every single student in our building admires you and enjoys being around you because you really are real with them. And I know, Jeff, that's kind of stolen from Tara Martin, like that real concept,
Mm-hmm.
but it's totally true. And the kids love being able, our students love being able to bond with you over you being so honest and admitting failures, admitting struggles, and admitting that you're going through a growth process. And I just wish that our teachers as a whole, no matter what you're teaching, could articulate their own growth to their students as much as I've seen you be able to do, because I think that as we're growing as a team, you get so much more out of it than feeling like the expert is standing in front of you and they know everything, and then the students are kind of going through that growth process on their own. So I really have loved learning that from you. I've tried to do that so much more with my students. But what is getting you excited about everything you're doing these days? I know that you have a lot of side projects. I'm hoping you get into talking about some of those. I'm going to really encourage you to do that. But there's so much that you've been able to share today. There's so much passion that comes through in your stories. What is keeping you excited about education?
Oh, that's a lot of that's a lot actually. So I love right now. I'm uber excited because just I really firmly believe that more and more people are recognizing or re-recognizing, for that matter, the importance of physical activity in our youth. And because of that, I think more and more people are recognizing that kids might not be as active as they used to be outside, and because of that, physical education is extremely important for our students. Because if done properly, we're, unfortunately, we're replacing that free play, that learning on your own, that outdoor time, that making games on your own, things along those lines. So I think people are actually recognizing that as something that's very important and something that is very much needed. So from a support standpoint, I couldn't be more excited about that. I mean, I really firmly believe that it's definitely on the up and up. Um, I think more and more people are recognizing and learning about what physical activity and the different types of physical activity can do for students' learning as well, which is huge, because there's a fairly big push, especially in Illinois, with physical education and specifically fitness, which is all fine and good because there's a whole world of data out there that says fit kids learn better, and cardiovascular endurance is key for cognition and all sorts of things, and I'm a huge proponent of that. But I also don't want people to forget that there's a huge cognitive benefit to just being able to skip, right? To being able to be functional on both hemispheres of the brain, working contralaterally in the body, myelinate some nervous pathways that are just hugely beneficial to our students, whether it's bear crawling on the ground, skipping and galloping on 2 feet, catching and throwing with both hands, kicking with both hands, touching your right elbow to your left knee. All of these physical activity things are huge for our students' cognition. And more people are learning about that and seeing that benefit, which to me is a great thing. Because unfortunately for physical education, I'm not ignorant to the fact what the stigma is, I should say, with PE. And fortunately, I think that's a little bit going away, because there are a lot of very quality physical educators that push these points home, that push the idea of the whole student and the holistic development of their students, and quality physical education that touches on all aspects of fitness, not just the health related components. So not just muscular strength, muscular endurance, body composition, flexibility, and cardiovascular endurance, but also the skill related components of fitness, like coordination, balance, hand-eye control, all those types of things that really envelop all of fitness, which is what we try to do as a PE department, is try to instill that in our students. And so all of that, I know that's kind of a long way around the answer to your question, but there's just really genuinely a lot of things that I'm very excited about with education, especially in the realm of physical education.
So with everything going on, with this movement of really getting our students what they need, and this progressive movement that's happening specifically with physical education, what's one piece of advice that, whether it be to specific types of teachers or just teachers that hear what you're saying and are really connecting to all your advice that you've shared so far, what's the biggest piece of advice that they need to be successful?
The biggest one.
You're acting like these questions are hard, but I think you can handle it. I mean, he's like, do you hear him, Jeff? He's like huffing and puffing over there.
Well, you know me, Ray. I can get on my soapbox pretty easily, so I'm trying to not do that. I'm trying to be concise.
Get on your soapbox.
Dude, get on it. Get on the soapbox.
Get on the box.
Just go.
All right, so 3 things. I know you asked for 1, but I want to give you 3 because you gave me permission to get up on the box. So here we go.
Do it.
Number 1, don't fear failure ever. Right? Expect it and learn from it. That's the number 1 thing, I think. The number 2 thing, no student will ever love what they are doing unless you love what you are doing. And the last one, for all this goes for all teachers, not just first year or second year or whatever, but all teachers. I firmly believe you have to take time for yourself, because you're not going to be your best unless you allow yourself to be your best. And whether that's a hobby, whether that's exercise, whether that's reading a book, watching a movie, something that is absolutely not school related for a certain amount of time, you have to find a way to put that into your schedule. I firmly believe that.
So Jennings, I want to touch on that, because at the beginning of this episode, you said you were out at a sand volleyball game. That's your game, right? That's your outlet to take time for yourself, isn't it?
Absolutely. I love it. I play 2 nights a week because through basically September, I'll play, because it's something that I know that no matter what I do, I can't take work there. I can't grade at the sand volleyball game. I can't plan lessons. It's time to just relax, have fun, work. I like to compete. So it's a time for me to compete and get in competition. And so I really think that that's important.
Jeff, I think we should pick up a sand volleyball game, you and me. Like, let's start a team.
Where you want to do it, like somewhere in Indiana, halfway?
Yeah, like halfway. Like you're in Ohio, I'm in Illinois.
All right,
we'll meet
cool.
halfway in
We'll
Indiana.
do like Fort Wayne-ish. Like, so if anybody in Fort Wayne is listening, find us a good spot, and we'll just come there once a week, and we'll play some games.
And I think
great spot.
We need Jennings, because apparently he's good.
He doesn't know, but by coming on the show, he's committed to come to that as well.
Are there some recruiting violations that are happening right now? I can't really tell.
No, you're good. You're good. No, but all three of those pieces of advice were, I mean, just flat, just perfect. Awesome. Glad you got on there, and I'm glad you gave us 3 instead of 1. That final one, and you touched on with your sand volleyball, and Ray, you and I, we've talked recently on a couple different episodes about, and we've had several guests who have talked about it as well of and Ray, I'm not going to say it. You didn't say it well the last episode. I'm going to say it bad this time, but you can't pour into someone else's cup until you fill your cup up, right? Until you take care of yourself, until you take that time for yourself and make sure that you're the best self you can be so that you can be the best for your students. So that is one that I just don't think can be said enough, because teachers we see so many that just, there's so much passion and love for what they're doing and what they're trying to do and how they're trying to help the student, that we're so likely to just burn themselves to the ground because they want to be better every single day. But we have to take that time for ourselves to reset, to relax, to like you said, Mike, to compete if that's something that gets you going. Whatever it is, take that time for yourself and make sure that you're mentally strong as well. So I love it, man. That's great stuff. So
Hey, Jeff, did you take any time for yourself today?
did I?
Yeah, did you take any time for
I
yourself?
actually did. I did. I actually took about mid-afternoon. I was just like, I was deep into some stuff, and I'm not gonna lie, I was a little stressed out about a few things. So I actually shut my laptop down, went upstairs, grabbed a cup of coffee and a book, and just I read a chapter, a little more than a chapter in a book.
Oh my
And
God,
just
that's
kind of like
almost
reset for that.
exactly what I did.
But then I'm also going. I got to go hit the gym after we're done recording tonight. So like that's my time with myself too. So
See, I almost did the same thing that you did, except I sat on my butt on the couch and watched Iron Man. That's what I
was
did.
the same, minus the gym. Yeah, that's hey, you got to do what's right for you, Ray.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's your time. It's not anybody else's time.
Exactly. That's the key. So all right. So now it's your time, Mike. It's your time to shine, as they say, or something. I don't know, some other corny line I could think of. Let's see how. I was gonna find a way to tie it into your physical education. We're gonna do 6 questions in 15 seconds or less. How about that?
Sounds good.
Jeff could not think of any cool way to twist that into what you do for a living somehow. So I'm not very good at my job. So what we're going to do, the next 6 questions, your goal is to answer each one in 15 seconds or less. And because I know you're competitive, we've had people that have rocked these out in 10 seconds or less each.
All right. Should I start my timer? Do you have one?
Ray and I both have stopwatches going. We compare them to each other's and the global watches to make sure everything's set. We have a panel of judges that are also going to listen and review the tape to make sure everything's legit.
And there's a trophy.
If you succeed, there's a trophy. Yeah.
I love this. See, I knew I liked this podcast for a reason. Dotting the T's and crossing the I's. I love it.
We're going to see what's going on here. All right, here we go. What is one ed tech tool that you cannot live without?
I don't know if this counts, but my iPad is an absolute necessity for my classes.
I think it counts. Give us a book that you're reading right now.
I actually just last night finished Smart Moves, Why Learning is Not All in Your Head by Carla Hannaford.
And who should we follow on Twitter today?
I think every teacher, especially PE teachers, should follow Jeremy Frisch on Instagram and on Twitter. Great stuff.
What's the best YouTube channel or website for educators?
I'm not a big individual website or YouTube channel guy. I'm much more into personally reaching out to people to have conversations. If I'm looking for something in particular, email, phone call, Twitter message, whatever it is.
I love it. Build a PLN instead. Give us a daily, weekly, or monthly routine that every teacher should get into.
Set time aside for yourself to be active.
And what's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
If you don't love what you do, if you love what you do, you'll never have to work a day in your life.
You did all right, Ray.
He did it.
All right. I think he did pretty well there.
Can we go back really quick?
Good answer.
Go
back.
Second question. Can you go back to the book? What book are you reading? It had like a great title.
Yeah. So it's Smart Moves, Why Learning is Not All in Your Head by Carla Hannaford.
And was it good? Do you recommend it?
Yeah. This is the first time I read it, and it far surpassed my expectations. Really, really good. And it's not just for physical educators. I would strongly encourage any teacher to read this book. because you'll get whatever you're looking for out of it, whether it's classroom management ideas or understanding why specific students act specific ways, or how to reach different types of students through different activities. And it is geared more towards activity in the classroom and movement. Obviously, I mean, it's called Smart Moves, but absolutely phenomenal. Great diagrams that explain things that are happening in the brain during different motor functions. Just awesome. Awesome.
I love that focus. And I have to say, Jeff, do you mind? Can I use the company card? Can I go buy that? I want to pick up that book. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, do it.
I also want to make sure our listeners can get a little giggle out of Jeff that when I said, hey, can we go back to question 2? Jeff went over in our doc that we're sharing right now while we're recording and highlighted the title. I'm like, I know what the title was, dude. I just want him to talk more on it. It was a great topic.
I actually went and added it to my Amazon shopping cart. That's what I was doing.
Oh, you were copying it in Amazon? That's smart.
I completely left the conversation. I have no idea what you guys are talking about anymore. I was over reading what the book is about.
Well, that's good news, though, because you're going to read a great book.
Yeah, it looks like a good book. I was looking at her other book, that Dominance. That looks cool, too.
Yeah.
It's an older one where she talks about, how you're, what you prefer your dominant hand and everything, it affects the way you think and act and stuff. Anyway, looks like cool stuff.
I have to say, Jennings, not to embarrass you, but this is why I wanted to have you on this podcast, because while I know you are absolutely an expert in physical education, and I know that there's going to be so many physical education teachers listening to this that gain so much value, the teachers that aren't teaching PE, that might be teaching boring subjects like math or writing or science, there's so much that we can take away from these ideas. And I so value all that you can share with those teachers about how to incorporate movement purposefully and really live in this live fit mentality. So I'm so excited you've shared so much, and I have the final and probably most important question of the night. Are you ready for it?
Yes.
All right. It only has to do with how people can continue this conversation. I want to make sure they can connect with you on whatever social media platforms you're comfortable with, so they can not just value the incredible stories you've shared, obviously, on this podcast, but also gain more insight from you by being connected to you and growing that PLN. So how can they connect?
Well, you can follow me on Twitter. I'm not great on it. I'm trying to be better because I do thoroughly enjoy it, and I like the content that I'm able to find. My Twitter handle is at the Schmike. That is THE in caps, and then SCHMIKE. It's an odd nickname from a niece and nephew from years and years ago that kind of stuck. And then email jenningsm@unit5.org. I'm pretty quick with responding to emails, and I think that's pretty much the easiest way because my dungeon of an office in the boys' locker room doesn't get great cell service. So
awesome. And you can find all the links and resources and everything we've talked about in this episode over at teachbetter.com, as well as those important links to connect with Mike. So head over to teachbetter.com for all of that. Be sure to hit subscribe so you don't miss any of the upcoming episodes. And if you can give us a rating and review, we'd really appreciate that as well. And let's take it one step further. Think of just 3 colleagues who need to hear these amazing stories like Michael's and share this podcast with them. We want to continue to spread this awesomeness. Mike, man, it's been a pleasure. This has been really cool. You did not disappoint. Ray had seriously talked you up a lot. And, you never know when someone talks someone else up and you think they're going to be amazing. You never know what you're going to get. But I'm telling you what, man, you absolutely delivered. I'm loving all of it. I can't wait to listen back to this episode when I'm editing it and get it out to people. And like Ray said, not just for people who teach phys ed, but just all teachers. There's so much they can take away from this, man. I really appreciate your time. Even when you had this crazy squirrels blowing up your house and whatever else attacking you guys, you were still able to come on, man. We really, really appreciate you.
Well, I thank you very much for the opportunity. I had a lot of fun. It's great talking shop with people that are passionate and want what's best for their students. So thank you both so much. It was absolutely my pleasure.
And until next time, let's get out there and let's teach better.